Hail and well met, viewer. My name is Zindios. Welcome to the first episode of DnD Newbie, where, quite frankly, I'm going to kind of talk about where I'm at right now in terms of DMing and how I'm doing things, because I have took on the unenviable task of deciding to homebrew my own world and my own campaign for my very first ever dungeon mastering experience, which may be one of the most foolish things I could probably ever do, but at the same time, isn't half the fun of the D&D stuff coming up with your own thing? Isn't that kind of the whole reason we do this, is to come up with our own stuff? So where I'm at right now is I'm doing a lot of the fun bit, the world building, like, ooh, where do these people come from? Where are these societies at? How does this society work? How do the druids function next to this mountain of dwarves and orcs, and how do the tieflings live in ice-filled mountains, and all this and that. That's really fun and all. But I think one of the things I'm very slowly learning is if you start too big, you kind of paralyze yourself and put yourself in a corner where it feels like every little detail of this world needs to make such perfect sense that nothing can just be weird. Nothing can just exist in a way that it would exist in just a typical game of D&D, or at least like old school style from what I understand. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I'm spending so much detail on that and like specifically where I want everybody to go and where I want their adventures to take them that I'm starting to realize there's a sense of paralysis where you get so caught up in that bit and doing all the writing bit that you're like, oh shit, people have to actually play this. People need to be able to actually enjoy the space that you've made and enjoy the things you've put in this space. It's not just for me, it's for other people too. The big kind of topic I'm learning right now is shrink your stuff down. What do I mean by that? Well, that doesn't necessarily mean make a smaller world. You can make your world as big as you want, like go crazy. But the thing I'm realizing is I'm putting so much detail into how societies work, where certain races and individuals live in correspondence to one another, and internal politics, and all these big crunchy things that most of these players aren't going to see for what's likely going to be months. It's going to take a while to get to a lot of these regions based off of how our schedule and our play time is going to line up. So what I've instead pivoted myself to is I have one little part of my world map, and I'm just taking a little corner of that. I'm just going to say, I'm going to develop this. This is going to be the first, 3 or 4, maybe even 5 adventures we have. I mean, there's a reason why in the Dungeon Master's Guide itself, it has a lot of the adventures broken up into up to level 1 to 4 is this adventure, and level 5 to 9 is this adventure, and so on and so forth. There's a reason why it's broken up like that, and it's because it's way more digestible. It's so much easier to just work off of okay, here's the general idea for maybe 4 to 6 sessions, depending on how frequently you play, depending on how frequently your sessions are. Here's kind of a good ballpark idea of where you can kind of plan everything out, and here's how you can set all this up to make sense. Here's good monsters to kind of play with when your players are between these particular levels, and here's how to design all that. Not necessarily how to design all that, but here's the general idea of how to do all of that. And since pivoting to that over the last week, I have felt the biggest wave of calm and relaxation and relief. I feel meditative in this very moment, like nothing could ever hurt me. Until, of course, one of my players does something I don't expect them to do during the first little bit of my campaign, and then I freak out and don't know how to improv off of it because I'm not trained. It's fine. That's the whole point. That's the whole reason we do this, is for people to go off the rails and be crazy. Just have fun, which I love. And that's exactly why breaking this up into piecemeal bits and saying, you're going to be in this town for level 1. Here's kind of your first dungeon-y adventure that'll take you this general direction. Or at the very least, here's kind of these locales, this gate that leads out of this particular duchy area is locked off because of whatever story reason or whatever, thing I managed to come up with in the moment if people try to leave. Because that's the biggest thing I'm trying to focus on with this campaign is making sure there's cool stuff in it, but also making sure that things are relatively sizable. The map I'm making and the region I'm building is relatively big. It's also not exactly geographically, it doesn't geographically make sense, but I think that's okay because it's a fantasy world and you're just there to have a good time and see the cool stuff. Maybe a desert doesn't make sense right next to, snowy plains and a bunch of islands, but it's your world. You don't have to worry about that right out the gate. I think that's like anything in this hobby. That's something you develop as you keep going. You develop your world building skills and you start looking at, r/geography and r/map porn or whatever. And you start looking at all that and getting a better sense of how things like that are built. But when you're starting out, especially in my shoes right now, I gotta keep reminding myself, it's okay for things to be small and not make a bunch of sense. You're not here to impress a bunch of people, and you're kind of here to impress a couple people. You're here to kind of impress your friends with your amazing grandiosity and showmanship. But at the end of the day, you're doing this to make cool spots for your friends to have fun adventures in and have memorable moments as their characters. And ultimately, that's the design I've been leading into for these first few levels and the first big arc of what they're gonna do in the campaign I'm making right now. And that has just it's 2 tons off the shoulders. It's amazing. And I think everybody would benefit from thinking that way, especially if you're being very bold like me and doing a homebrew right out the gate instead of being smart and maybe picking up maybe a one shot or maybe a campaign that kind of makes a little bit of sense and takes you through a few levels, maybe guides you and shows you a few things on how this whole system works and how you can design encounters and things like that. Or you could be like me and just watch a million videos and have so much information that you're now stun-locked. You're having analysis paralysis for days, and then you end up doing nothing. And then you push the date back further and further and further because you don't feel ready yet. And now you're basically washed up and don't want to play D&D anymore because now it stresses you out thinking about it, even though you want to pour over your world so much. Just like a real author. At the end of the day, we are making adventures for our friends to enjoy, for us to enjoy telling, and for all of us to just get a fun sense of being who you want to be in a world that, a world that is the world, really. I mean, have you looked outside? Have you seen the outdoors? It's kind of muggy over here today. Start small. Don't start big. Think little. Just come up with your individual dungeons or areas or adventures first and let your players stumble on that, as opposed to, here's a giant campaign and they've immediately off-railroaded it because they wanted to go do a different adventure with an NPC I had to make up on the fly that they now want to help with some sort of disaster that I also came up with on the fly. That's the fun. The fun of this is doing the improv. So lean into the improv. Have fun with it by making small spaces that your players can just check out and enjoy and ask surprising questions about that maybe you didn't think about before. And since you've thought a lot smaller, you can come up with answers about that instead of trying to come up with giant lore implications like you're trying to write the next Dark Souls game for Miyazaki. It's okay, we're all waiting for Elden Ring too. Just calm down. You'll be alright. That new Switch game is coming out sometime soon, I don't know when. Is it gonna be good? Who knows? What is gonna be good is the campaign I run with my friends and the time I have playing my other friends' campaign and having a glorious time with. Because we just get to be so much more loose. So be loose. Have fun with it. Come up with your fun little adventures. Let your little buddies go on fun little times. Come up with fun NPCs as you go. And just be small. Be a little smaller. Come up with just one region if you have to. It's okay to be like, I only have one dungeon, right? I think at the end of the day, it really just comes down to don't sweat the prep as much as you think you need to, and just focus on the things you know you want to do in the initial session. Have sort of the highlight things that you want to do in the session. Figure out how you get from point A to point B with these people, even if they come up with a point C or D or F. Even skipping entire letters of the alphabet to go do something you didn't plan for, but they'll just have a good time doing because you didn't think too big and you didn't paralyze yourself thinking too much about the lore implications of that barkeeper actually being related to one of the last dragons of your world and actually related to a giant ice demon that's frozen inside of the mountain. Just take a breath, have a cup of coffee, and just go bit by bit. That's what I remind myself of every day. Coming from a D&D newbie, have a good time and just get out there and play.